What's up guys, Romsicle here, and today I'm going to be giving my 3 reasons why you should get a hot swap mechanical keyboard over a non-hot swap mechanical keyboard. Let's get into it. The number 1 reason is flexibility. You're not locked down by the switches that you initially get with your keyboard. Say you got Gateron Reds for your first and only mechanical keyboard, and then you start diving into the mechanical keyboard market, looking at the pros and cons of Gateron Yellows, Gateron Inks, all that kind of goodness, and you want to start trying out new switches. With a hot swappable mechanical keyboard, you can do that with ease. Every hot swap keyboard comes with a keycap puller and a switch puller, so you don't have to buy extra tools to do this work. All you have to do is buy a bunch of those switches and replace them like Legos, and it's literally just plug and play. And bam, you suddenly have yourself a brand new keyboard. The switch options and configurations are endless with the hot swappable mechanical keyboard. Not only that, you might be saving a lot of money too. If you're going from a Gateron Red to potentially a Gateron Yellow switch, the switches only cost around $20 to $30 to fill an entire keyboard, so it's way cheaper than buying a brand new mechanical keyboard. The number 2 reason is kind of minor, but you can make easier repairs. In the unlikely event where your switches start to fail, or are at the end of its life cycle, which is pretty rare, you can easily pop the old switch out and put a new switch back in, and you are good to go. A lot of times people are throwing out the keyboards when only one key doesn't work, but for as low as 20 cents for a single switch, you can turn that faulty switch back to new and you are good to go, and you don't have to worry about buying another mechanical keyboard. And the biggest reason is number 3, you have an easier time lubing up your switches. The lubing process already takes a lot of time, but with a hot swap mechanical keyboard, you're just saving a lot more time because all you need to do is pull out the switch, lube it up, and put it back in, and you're already good to go. And even if you decide to change your mind to not lube your switches after you pulled all your switches out, you can easily put them back into their sockets. No fuss, no muss, no keyboard downtime, and that's an important factor here. For the beginners watching, you probably don't really care about lubing your switches because either 1, you've never heard of lubing switches, or 2, you've never experienced it. But if you ask anyone who's lubed their switches, there's really no going back to a stock switch, because after lubing your switches, it's a whole new typing experience. They feel way better and they sound way better. I know a lot of people who've been using mechanical keyboards for years and they've never lubed their switches, which is kind of sad to me because they've never felt or heard the full potential of what their switches could be if they lubed it. Especially with the spacebar, if you lube that, you're never going back to a stock spacebar. An example would be a Razer spacebar. At first, it's super rattly and not clean at all, but once you lube it up, it's phenomenal. To be very clear, all the reasons that I've talked about in this video are not exclusive to a hot swap keyboard. You can still do all of these things with a typical non-hot swap keyboard, but the key point is that it's way easier, it's way less time consuming, and you have way less downtime on your keyboard if you do all these things on a hot swap keyboard. Let's do an example of where you have a 60% keyboard with Gateron Reds and you want to change them into Helios V2s. You'll first need a small screwdriver to take all the screws out. Then you have to disassemble the case entirely so that you can expose the PCB board. Once you have the PCB exposed, you can now desolder your switches using a pump and a soldering iron, and then you can take out the switches after you're done, put the V2s back into the board, resolder them back in with some soldering wire and a soldering iron, making sure that there's no misalignment issues and testing them to make sure that they're all soldered on properly. And then you have to reassemble the keyboard, put the screws back in, and then you're finally done. And that process takes maybe 30 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour and a half, who knows. But with a hot swap mechanical keyboard, to do the exact same thing, all you have to do is take out the Gateron Red switch, put the Helios V2 switch in, and you are good to go. And that is the entire process. If you're really adventurous and you want to save time, a hot swap keyboard will do wonders for you. Once again, between non-hot swap and hot swappable keyboards, it's all about the flexibility and how easy you can do things. Sure, you're able to do the exact same things, but time is definitely wasted with a non-hot swappable keyboard. A hot swap keyboard is really great for someone in the long run because you never really know how deep you'll get into the mechanical keyboard market. And if you want to test out some switches like some Helios or some Holy Pandas, you can instantly do that with your hot swappable keyboard. So if you're going to be someone who wants to be flexible and looking at it long term, I will always recommend getting a hot swap keyboard. Especially if you're testing switches to find the perfect switch for your endgame keyboard, you really don't want to do that with a non-hot swap keyboard. You might not end up liking the switches and you'll have to desolder them and resolder your old switches back in, especially if that's your only keyboard. But for enthusiasts, they usually don't really care about any of these issues, to be honest, because a lot of you already have soldered boards and have your endgame keyboard, unless you're someone who's always testing out switches like I do. That's why I prefer a hot swappable keyboard. Anyways, that's been it. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.